Laurenda Miller always believed life had a strange sense of timing, usually the bad kind. Car accidents on the day rent was due, job cutbacks during her mom's chemo cycle, and bills always arriving before her paycheck did. But nothing prepared her for the December evening when a single piece of paper would force her into the hardest, most life-changing decision she had ever made. A choice that would lead her straight into the life and heart of a man she had never met, yet would never forget. Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. Laurenda had rehearsed the conversation in her head the whole bus ride to the hospital. Just ask nicely, she told herself. They'll give you more time. Hospitals cared about patients, right? About families? About people? But the moment she stepped into the billing office, fluorescent lights buzzing, the scent of disinfectant thick in the air, reality crashed into her. The woman behind the counter, glasses perched on her nose, printed out a new balance sheet and slid it across the desk with a sigh. I'm sorry, Ms. Miller. The estimate has increased due to complications. Your mother needs an emergency treatment package. Up front. Laurenda stared at the bolded number, $150,000. Her stomach dropped so fast she grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. That can't be right, she whispered. She was stable 3 days ago. The clerk softened. She still is. But the oncologist wants to start an aggressive treatment immediately. They can't proceed without the payment. Her chest tightened, breath unsteady, vision flickering as if the whole room dimmed. $150,000? She barely made $28,000 a year working practically every waking hour. She had no savings, no family with money, and no wealthy friends to call. Christmas was 2 weeks away and she couldn't even afford a real tree this year. But the thought of her mother in the next building over, fragile, hopeful, trusting her. I'll find a way, she murmured. I'll fix this. She folded the paper carefully, as if bending it wrong would make everything worse, and stepped out of the office. The cafeteria was half empty when she walked in. Plastic chairs, vending machines humming. Laurenda sat alone in a corner booth, pressing her palms to her eyes to stop herself from crying. Crying didn't help. Crying never paid bills. So she breathed. One slow inhale. One slow exhale. And that's when she heard it. 2 nurses at the next table whispering over lukewarm coffee. It's tragic, the younger one said. He's trying again. After everything. I heard he's looking for a surrogate, the older nurse replied softly. A private arrangement. Poor man. Losing his wife like that. And the baby. Laurenda didn't mean to eavesdrop. She tried to focus on her tea. But the words couldn't be ignored. Surrogate. Private arrangement. Money. The older nurse lowered her voice. They say he's offering a large amount. He's, well, wealthy. He wants another chance at fatherhood. The younger nurse sighed. I hope he finds someone kind. Someone strong. Laurenda's hands froze around her cup. That world didn't belong to her. She was just a tired daughter trying to keep her mother alive. But $150,000. Her mind raced, heart pounding in her ears. She was healthy. She was responsible. And she had nothing else left to offer life except her own body, her own time. She Googled the fertility agency before fear could talk her out of it. Their office was a 15-minute walk away. Her feet were already moving. The building was sleek. Tall glass doors, quiet lobby. The kind of place where wealthy couples whispered about dreams money couldn't buy. The receptionist smiled warmly. How can we help you today? Laurenda swallowed hard. Her voice came out thin. I want to apply as a surrogate. The receptionist blinked with gentle surprise but nodded. Of course. Please step inside. We'll explain everything. Everything happened fast, too fast. Forms, interviews, medical questions, psychological evaluations, legal explanations. They made sure she understood the sacrifice, the commitment, the emotional risks. And she did. She understood that this wasn't simple, but nothing in her life was. At the end, the coordinator pulled out a contract. Given your profile, one intended parent has been matched with you. She smiled reassuringly. He's reputable, respected, financially stable, and kind. Very kind. Laurenda nodded, though her hands shook. The base compensation is $150,000. Her breath hitched. The exact number she needed. God, a fate, chance, whatever it was, it felt terrifyingly timed. Would you like to meet him? The coordinator asked. Meet him? No. That would make this personal. Emotional. Dangerous. She shook her head quickly. No. I'd prefer to keep it professional. The coordinator respected it. So 5 minutes later, with tears in her eyes and hope in her trembling hands, Laurenda signed the contract that would change her life. When she left the building, the wind was sharp, stinging against her cheeks. Holiday lights twinkled across the street. Couples walked past carrying gift bags. Children pointed at decorations. It should have felt festive. Felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark. But she walked home with her chin lifted because this wasn't about her. This was about saving the only family she had left. She just didn't know. The man on the other end of that contract, billionaire widower David Harrington, had already heard her name. And the moment he saw her file, he whispered to himself, someone like her deserves the world. I hope I can make this easy for her. Neither of them knew how deeply intertwined their lives were about to become. The next morning, Laurenda received a message she didn't expect. The intended parent wishes to meet you personally before the first procedure. He insists. Her heart pounded. Would meeting him change everything? Laurenda woke before dawn, her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. The soft gray light of early morning stretched across her small apartment, illuminating the stack of overdue bills on the kitchen counter and the crumpled letter from her mother's doctor. The words echoed in her mind. Mom needs care immediately. Costs will be high. She ran a hand through her hair, trying to steady the anxious flutter in her chest. Today was the day she would meet him, the billionaire whose desperate hope for a child had intersected with her desperate need for money. $150,000. Enough to cover her mother's care, to pay rent, and maybe even leave a small cushion for herself. Yet, as practical as the transaction was supposed to be, Laurenda felt the weight of what she was agreeing to more keenly than she had anticipated. It wasn't just a contract. It wasn't just a signature and a check. This was carrying another person's life inside her. Someone else's dream. Someone else's hope. And she had no idea if she could keep the emotional boundary she had promised herself she would. She dressed carefully in soft, comfortable layers, choosing a long cardigan that could shield her growing figure, a subtle reminder to herself to stay invisible. She looked in the mirror and tried to smile at her reflection. You can do this, she whispered. It's just a meeting. Just a conversation. Her apartment smelled faintly of coffee and early winter air. She poured a cup, the steam rising in gentle curls. Every sip warmed her hands but did little to warm her racing thoughts. She reviewed the agreement in her mind. The money, the medical appointments, the privacy, the clear boundaries, no attachments, no personal entanglements, just a business transaction. But even as she repeated the words like a mantra, Laurenda's heart betrayed her. What if I can't keep my promise? She thought. What if he's not just a name on a contract? The knock at the door startled her. Her breath hitched. She wasn't expecting anyone. Yet the familiar sense of nervous anticipation washed over her. Her phone buzzed again, a reminder of the time. 30 minutes until the meeting. She checked herself in the mirror one last time, smoothing her hair and adjusting the hem of her skirt. She felt both ridiculous and terrified, as if stepping into another life entirely. She wasn't just Laurenda, the daughter, the caretaker, the struggling woman scraping by. She was about to become Laurenda, the surrogate. Someone's hope, someone's future. The elevator ride down was silent but endless in her mind. Every ding of the floors passing seemed to echo her heartbeat. By the time she stepped into the bright, modern lobby of the office building where David had asked to meet her, she felt like she was holding her breath. The receptionist looked up and smiled. "Are you here to see Mr. David Hale?" Laurenda nodded. "Yes. You can take the seat over there. He'll be with you shortly." She sank into the chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap, and looked around. The office smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive leather. The sunlight bounced off the glass walls in sharp, bright slices. Every detail screamed wealth and authority, and Laurenda felt suddenly painfully aware of her own simple outfit. The thin cardigan, the modest jewelry. Her mind raced. Just keep it professional. You're not here to impress him. You're here to make a transaction. Nothing more. Minutes stretched longer than they should have. She sipped water from the glass the receptionist had offered, trying to focus on her breathing. She reminded herself why she was here. $150,000. Her mother. Stability. The chance to breathe for a moment. And then he arrived. David Hale entered the room with a quiet authority that immediately demanded attention without shouting. He wasn't flashy, no loud suits, no ostentatious gestures. But there was an unmistakable presence in the way he moved, the calm in his stride, the quiet confidence in his gaze. "Laurenda," he said, extending a hand. His smile was faint but warm. "Thank you for coming." She shook his hand, noting how steady and reassuring it felt, and tried to speak normally. "Of course. Thank you for meeting me." He gestured to a seat across from his desk, and they sat. David's office was minimal but elegant, glass walls, sleek furniture, and a few personal touches that hinted at a life carefully curated for both comfort and efficiency. David leaned back slightly, folding his hands. "I want to make sure you understand exactly what this arrangement entails," he said. His voice was calm, even, but Laurenda could sense a subtle undercurrent of hope in it, a silent desperation that mirrored her own. She nodded. "I've read the contract. I understand the responsibilities, the appointments, the medical care." David's gaze softened slightly. "And you understand that it's important to remain detached emotionally? That this is purely a business agreement?" Laurenda swallowed, nodding again. "I understand." He gave a small, almost imperceptible sigh. "Good. I need to be honest. This isn't just about me wanting a child. It's about hope. My wife passed 2 years ago, and this is my chance to have something of her with me. To feel like there's a continuation, a legacy." Her throat tightened. She hadn't expected grief to come so early in the conversation. So gently, so humanly. I understand," she said softly. David's eyes met hers. "That's why I'm so careful about who I work with. I need someone trustworthy, someone reliable, someone kind." Laurenda felt the weight of his words settle into her chest, an ache she hadn't anticipated. She wanted to meet his gaze with strength, but the quiet vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. I will do my best," she said finally. "For you and for the baby." He nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes. "That's all I ask." They spent the next hour discussing logistics, the medical team, appointments, diet, privacy, and finances. Each detail confirmed the seriousness of the arrangement. Yet Laurenda couldn't shake the feeling that something unspoken hung in the air. A tension, a curiosity, a fragile bridge forming between them that neither wanted to cross yet both felt. By the time she left the office, the sun was beginning to set over the city, casting long, warm streaks across the skyscrapers. Laurenda walked to her car, her mind racing. She had signed the contract, confirmed the details, and stepped into the first day of a journey she had no idea how it would end. The air was cold, sharp, and real. She hugged her coat closer, feeling the weight of possibility pressing down on her. This isn't just about money anymore, she realized. It's about life. It's about hope. And maybe about something I didn't expect at all. As she started the engine, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "See you at the first appointment tomorrow. David." Laurenda stared at the screen, her heart hammering. She hadn't expected this. He didn't need to text. Yet somehow the message felt intimate, personal, and she felt a flicker of something she wasn't ready to name. Would she be able to keep this strictly professional? Could she handle being so close to a man whose hope depended entirely on her? If you were Laurenda, would you be able to stay professional? Or would your heart start noticing him?
Comment Billo?
The next morning, Laurenda arrived at the upscale fertility clinic, a modern building of glass and steel that gleamed under the winter sun. Her hands fidgeted with the strap of her purse as she stepped through the revolving doors. Her breath fogged in the crisp air, and her stomach twisted into anxious knots. She had prepared herself for this day for weeks, rehearsing every answer, every boundary, every calm, professional demeanor. Yet nothing could truly prepare her for walking into the room where David would be waiting, not just as a client, but as the man whose hopes and grief were intertwined with every step of this process. Inside, the clinic was quiet but efficient. Soft instrumental holiday music floated through the lobby, offering an oddly comforting background to the tension building in her chest. She checked in at the front desk, and a nurse directed her to the consultation room. Laurenda entered and froze for a heartbeat. There he was, David Hale. Not in a suit this time, but in a simple sweater and jeans. Casual, relaxed, yet even casual, he exuded a presence that made the room feel charged, focused, important. "Good morning," he said softly, rising slightly to offer her a hand. She shook it, surprised by how grounding it felt. "Morning," she replied. Her voice was steadier than she felt. He gestured to a chair across from him. "Are you nervous? Terrified?" she admitted, a small laugh escaping despite the anxiety. "And I'm supposed to be professional. You're allowed to be human," he said, his calm tone wrapping around her like a soft blanket. For a moment they sat in silence. Laurenda felt the weight of anticipation pressing against her chest. She knew today would be more than paperwork. This would be the first real step into a process that could change both their lives forever. The nurse entered, clipboard in hand, guiding them through the procedure and the initial scans. Laurenda's pulse quickened as she lay on the examination bed, the sterile smell of the clinic filling her senses. She tried to focus on the music, the rhythmic sound of the nurse's instructions, but every time David's presence at her side caught her eye, her heart stumbled. Then the moment came, the first ultrasound. The screen flickered to life, revealing the tiny, almost imperceptible outline of the embryo. The nurse explained softly, "Everything looks good so far." Laurenda's eyes welled with tears before she could stop them. She wasn't expecting relief and awe to hit her this way. This was more than a medical procedure, it was hope in motion. David's hand hovered near hers, hesitant. "May I?" She nodded, and he gently took her hand in his. The warmth of his grip was grounding, comforting, yet the subtle electricity of it made her stomach flutter. For a few moments they simply held hands, watching the screen. The nurse stepped out to give them privacy, and the quiet of the room seemed almost sacred. "You're incredible," David said softly, not as a billionaire client, not as a man desperate for an heir, but as someone who seemed to genuinely see her for who she was. "I don't know how you're doing this, how you're giving so much." Laurenda swallowed hard, feeling the emotion rising. I have my reasons," she murmured, brushing a tear from her cheek. "My mom, she's sick, and I want to help her. I need to help her." He nodded, eyes tender. That's brave, and kind, and he stopped, swallowing. "I can't imagine anyone else who could do this." Her heart thudded painfully. She tried to look away, but curiosity and emotion tugged her gaze back to his. The vulnerability in his eyes, the quiet honesty in his tone, disarmed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Then the nurse returned, giving them instructions for the next steps and medication. Reality intruded gently, grounding them back to the clinical purpose of the visit. Laurenda felt a mix of relief and hesitation as they left the room. The winter sun had brightened, and snowflakes danced lazily in the light. She pulled her coat tighter around her, suddenly conscious of the closeness of David walking beside her. "You okay?" he asked casually, though his tone carried subtle concern. She nodded. I think so. It's a lot to process." "I know," he said. "It is. And I want you to know, I don't expect you to carry more than you're comfortable with." The sincerity in his words struck her. She wanted to believe it, but the contract, the money, the responsibility, it all weighed heavily. "I know," she murmured. "Thank you for saying that." For a moment, neither spoke, simply walking in rhythm. Then she laughed softly, a nervous sound. "I can't believe I'm literally helping a billionaire have a baby. I never imagined my life would turn like this." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that made her chest ache with something she didn't want to name. "Life has a way of surprising you," he said. As they reached the street, he turned slightly to face her. "I know this is unusual," he admitted, "for both of us. But I'm glad it's you. I trust you. And I hope you trust me too." Her pulse quickened. She nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight. Trust. It was a word she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. Yet standing there, watching him in the winter sun, something inside her wanted to reach for it. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we start the next step, and I know it's going to be challenging, but we'll get through it. Together." She swallowed, feeling the flutter of emotion twist in her chest. Together, a word she hadn't used lightly in years. As they parted that day, Laurenda felt a strange mixture of hope and trepidation. She knew this journey would change her life. Not just for the money, not just for her mother, but in ways she couldn't yet understand. And she had no idea that David was already thinking about her in ways that went far beyond the contract, far beyond expectation, and dangerously close to something neither of them was supposed to feel. That night, Laurenda received a text from an unknown number. Heartbeat confirmed. First step done. "I don't want to let this go." Her heart pounded. Could a man she barely knew feel this deeply already? Could she allow herself to feel? If you were Laurenda, would you let yourself feel for him, or keep it strictly business? Comment Bilo? The following week, Laurenda found herself in a whirlwind of appointments, blood tests, and ultrasounds. The clinic had become almost a second home, one where the sterile smell of antiseptic mixed with the strange comfort of routine. Each visit was a reminder of the contract she had signed, the money she needed, and the weight of the life growing inside her. David had insisted on accompanying her for the first few sessions, not out of obligation, but because he wanted to witness the progress personally. Laurenda had been apprehensive at first, unsure how to feel about a billionaire showing such interest in something so intimate. But each time she looked at him, she realized that behind the calm, commanding presence, he was just as human, fragile, and cautious as she was. On a chilly Thursday morning, they arrived at the clinic together. Snow had coated the streets in white, the city sparkling under the winter sun. Laurenda tugged at her scarf, her nerves fluttering as she stepped inside. David followed closely, carrying the small bag she had prepared with her essentials. "This is getting easier," he said softly as they waited for her name to be called. Laurenda gave a half-smile. "Easier? You make it sound like a stroll in the park." He shrugged. "A stroll with stakes. High stakes. That's just as intimidating." She laughed quietly, feeling the tension ease slightly. "High stakes? You mean carrying a billion-dollar legacy?" David shook his head, eyes serious. "No. The stakes for me are more personal." Laurenda glanced at him, curious but unwilling to probe. Some things were best left unsaid for now. When the nurse called her in, David walked beside her, guiding her gently. The ultrasound technician smiled warmly, gesturing for Laurenda to lie on the bed. She obeyed, nerves coiling in her stomach. David pulled up a chair beside her, his hand brushing hers ever so slightly. The screen flickered to life, and there it was, the first real heartbeat of the life they were now connected to. Laurenda's eyes filled with tears she had been holding back for days. She wasn't sure why she was so overwhelmed, but the sight of the tiny, flickering heartbeat made her chest ache with an unexpected tenderness. David's hand found hers, steady and grounding. "It's beautiful," he murmured, almost to himself. "It is," she whispered. "I didn't expect to feel this strong connection already." He looked at her, eyes soft. "Me neither. But I think it's okay to feel it. We don't have to pretend anymore. Not here." Not now. Laurenda felt her pulse quicken. Pretend. That was all this had been supposed to be. A transaction, a business arrangement. But the warmth in David's gaze, the sincerity in his voice, made her question every rule she had imposed on herself. They spent the rest of the appointment reviewing the scans, discussing health precautions, and noting the progress. But beneath the clinical conversations, something unspoken was building. A fragile, tentative bond that neither could fully articulate. After the session, they stepped out into the snow, David's hand brushing against hers again. This time, Laurenda didn't pull away. "You know," he said, his breath forming a soft cloud in the crisp air, "I've seen a lot of things in my life. Success, failure, fortune, loss. But watching you today, seeing your courage, it's different." She looked at him, heart fluttering. "Different how?" "Human," he admitted. "Real, honest. Not about contracts or money. Just you." Laurenda felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wasn't used to being seen this way, not by anyone, let alone someone as powerful and intimidating as David. For a moment, they walked in silence, letting the snow crunch beneath their boots. Then he spoke again, softer this time. "Do you ever wonder if things could be more than this arrangement?" Her heart skipped. She knew he meant more than the surrogate contract, more than the transactional relationship they had begun. She didn't know how to respond. I don't know," she whispered. "It's complicated." "I know," he said gently. "But sometimes complications lead to the most unexpected rewards." Laurenda's pulse raced, and she looked away, focusing on the snowflakes swirling in the light. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel the warmth he offered, the hope that perhaps this journey could be something more than a contract, more than money. Over the next few days, their interactions deepened. Texts checking on her health, casual conversations about mundane things, coffee preferences, favorite books, winter movies. Each message carried an undercurrent of something neither dared to name aloud. Attachment. One evening, as Laurenda prepared a simple dinner for herself, her phone buzzed. It was a photo message from David, a small hand-drawn sketch of a baby mobile with a note, "Dreaming ahead. Hope it's not too soon to think about happy things." Her chest tightened. She stared at the screen, realizing that his thoughts were entangled with hers in ways that transcended the contract. She typed a quick reply, fingers trembling slightly. "Not too soon. I like thinking about happy things." He responded almost immediately, "Good. Then we're on the same page." Laurenda put the phone down, heart racing, a mixture of excitement and fear coursing through her. She knew this bond was dangerous. It was not what she had signed up for. Yet she couldn't deny the way her heart responded every time David reached out. Every time he looked at her with something beyond gratitude, beyond necessity, beyond reason. That night, lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling, thinking of him, the baby, the life they were creating together. She had agreed to this for money, for her family, for her mother's care. But somewhere along the way she had begun to hope. And she had no idea that David was feeling the same way, struggling with feelings that went far beyond the contract, far beyond logic and dangerously close to love. The next morning, Laurenda received a bouquet at her door, white roses, a handwritten note. "I know we started this as business, but I can't stop thinking about more." Her heart raced. Was he confessing feelings? Or was this just another gesture of gratitude? If you were Laurenda, would you respond to a billionaire's feelings? Or keep it strictly business? Comment Bilo? The weeks passed quickly, each one marked by the rhythm of prenatal appointments, gentle check-ins, and the quiet hum of new routines forming around Laurenda and David. What had begun as a business arrangement was slowly, almost imperceptibly, becoming something more, something neither of them had expected. Laurenda had begun to notice little things. The way David's eyes softened whenever he glanced at her, the way he remembered which tea she preferred during late-night cravings, the subtle ways he tried to make her life easier without asking. A handwritten schedule for prenatal vitamins left on her counter. Warm blankets waiting on her chair when she arrived at appointments. Small, meaningful gestures that spoke louder than any words could. One particularly cold morning, Laurenda found herself shivering as she made her way to the clinic. Snowflakes clung to her coat, melting against the warmth of her skin. She spotted David immediately, leaning against his car, scarf wrapped neatly around his neck, a thermos of steaming tea in his hand. "You'll need this," he said, holding it out. Laurenda smiled, taking it with grateful hands. "You didn't have to." He shrugged, a faint blush rising to his cheeks. "I know, but I wanted to." They drove together in silence, the cityscape blurring past the windows. Inside the clinic, the air smelled of antiseptic and soft floral perfumes. David held her hand lightly as they waited, his thumb brushing against hers in a gesture that felt intimate without intrusion. When they entered the ultrasound room, Laurenda lay back, her heart thudding with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. The technician applied the gel, moving the wand carefully across her belly. The screen flickered, and there it was, the unmistakable, rhythmic heartbeat of the baby. Laurenda's eyes welled with tears again, and this time, David didn't try to hide his own emotion. "It's amazing," he whispered, voice soft. "Look at that, our little miracle." Laurenda felt warmth rush through her chest. "It feels real," she murmured, leaning slightly toward him. "Not just in a contract or an agreement. Real life." David nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "Real life," he repeated. "And I'm grateful. More than I thought I could be." As the days passed, their interactions became more natural. David would send texts checking on her comfort, reminding her to rest, joking about cravings, and teasing her gently about overthinking everything. Laurenda, who had always prided herself on her independence, found herself looking forward to his messages, counting the hours until she could see him again. One evening, after a long day, Laurenda returned home to find her apartment transformed. Candles flickered softly, casting golden shadows across the room. A pot of her favorite stew simmered gently on the stove. A handwritten note lay on the counter. "Dinner is ready. I thought we could talk. Just us." Her heart fluttered. She wasn't used to someone going to such lengths for her, especially someone like David. She hesitated, then smiled, letting herself indulge in the warmth he had created. When he arrived, the air between them was filled with a quiet understanding. They sat down to eat, conversation flowing easily, laughter punctuating the air. It was different from their earlier interactions. It was personal, intimate, and comfortable. After dinner, they sat by the window, watching the city lights glimmer in the snow. David's expression softened, vulnerability peeking through his usually composed demeanor. "Laurenda," he began, his voice gentle, "I know this started as a business arrangement, and I know there are boundaries, but I can't ignore how I feel." Laurenda's breath caught. "David," he looked at her earnestly, "I care about you, not just because of the baby or the contract. Care about you, all of you." Tears pricked her eyes. She had tried to deny it, to focus on the arrangement, to keep her feelings locked away. But hearing him speak so openly, so honestly, broke down the wall she had built. "I care too," she whispered, her voice trembling. "More than I expected to." He reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. The warmth spread through her, grounding her. They sat in silence, letting the moment stretch, letting the unspoken understanding between them fill the room. The following weeks were a dance of normalcy and tenderness. David accompanied her to appointments, helping her navigate the physical and emotional changes of pregnancy. They laughed over ridiculous cravings, debated over baby names, and shared quiet moments that no contract could dictate. Each day, the lines between agreement and affection blurred further, until neither could imagine returning to the way things had been before. But as their bond deepened, Laurenda's mind kept returning to the inevitable. The contract still existed. The world outside their bubble didn't pause for feelings. They had to decide, would this be just a temporary connection, a fleeting moment born of necessity? Or could they risk everything for something real, something lasting? And then one morning, As they left the clinic, Laurenda received a call that shook her to the core. It was her mother's doctor, speaking urgently about her mother's deteriorating condition. The gravity of the situation hit Laurenda like a cold wind. The money she had earned through the surrogate arrangement was not enough to ease her fear or the looming questions about what would happen after the baby arrived. David noticed her distress immediately. He didn't speak at first. He just wrapped an arm around her shoulders, offering silent support. Then softly he said, "We'll face it together." Laurenda's eyes met his, and in that moment, she realized that what she felt for him had grown beyond gratitude, beyond reliance. It was love, and judging by the way he looked at her, she wasn't alone in that feeling. Yet, as comforting as his words were, reality intruded. The world outside their bubble was waiting. The pregnancy was progressing, their contract still in effect, and every step forward carried with it questions they weren't yet ready to answer. Laurenda took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had no choice but to face it, and she knew she wouldn't have to do it alone. Not if David was truly committed to being there, not as a contract, not as a business partner, but as something far more profound. That night, Laurenda received a text from David. "I can't stop thinking about you, about us. I know we have rules, but I need to ask, do you feel the same? Or is this just me?" Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. Her heart was screaming yes, but her mind was full of doubts. Could they survive what was coming? Could love truly exist in the shadow of a contract? If you were Laurenda, would you risk your heart for love that started with money? Comment Bilo? The weeks following Laurenda's mother's urgent health update were heavy with uncertainty. Even with David's unwavering support, Laurenda found herself navigating the storm of worry and fatigue that came with her mother's condition, all while carrying a life that was no longer just her own. David, ever patient, tried to make each day as manageable as possible. He attended every doctor's appointment with her, ensuring that she felt safe and cared for. But he also noticed the way her laughter had dimmed, the way her smile sometimes felt forced, the exhaustion etched into her posture. He wanted to take all of her burdens onto himself, but he knew she needed to feel in control, needed to make decisions for herself, even when those decisions weighed heavily on her. One evening, as they settled into her small apartment, snow falling softly against the window panes, Laurenda sank onto the couch with a tired sigh. David followed, settling beside her, careful not to crowd her. The warm glow from the lamps gave the room a cozy ambience, masking the underlying tension that had been building over the past few days. "You've been quieter than usual," David observed gently. "What's on your mind?" Laurenda hesitated, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "It's everything. My mom, the baby, the contract. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this to get even more complicated." David reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers. "You're not alone," he said firmly. "Whatever happens, we face it together." She looked at him, taking in his serious expression, the warmth in his eyes that contradicted the cold world outside. "David, do you ever regret this? The whole surrogate arrangement?" He paused, considering his words carefully. "Not once," he admitted. "Every time I see you, I'm reminded that some of the most meaningful things in life aren't things we can buy or plan for. They happen because of connection, trust, and choice." Laurenda's chest tightened. Connection, trust, choice. Words that had taken her weeks to embrace fully. She leaned slightly toward him, her head brushing against his shoulder. The comfort of his presence wrapped around her like a protective shield. The next morning, they drove to the hospital for her mother's checkup. Laurenda's mother was tired, pale, but her spirit remained strong. David stayed in the waiting room while Laurenda met with the doctor. When she returned, her expression was grave. "Mom's condition isn't worsening," she said quietly, "but she needs constant care, and I can't handle it all by myself." David stood, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then you don't have to," he said simply. "We'll find a way to make it work." Together, they spent the ride back planning care schedules, discussing options and strategizing. And yet, in the midst of logistics, there was something unspoken hanging in the air. a growing awareness of their feelings. Each moment together, each shared glance, each touch of hands, was slowly weaving them closer. That evening, after a long day, Laurenda and David found themselves sitting by the window in her apartment, city lights shimmering outside. She rested her head against his shoulder. "David," she murmured, "I don't know what I would have done without you these past few weeks." He turned slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You'd be stronger than you realize," he said softly. "But I'm glad you don't have to find out alone." The words hung in the room, soft, intimate, impossible to ignore. Laurenda felt her heart beat faster, her chest tightening with a mixture of fear and longing. She wanted to speak, to tell him everything she felt, but the contract loomed over them, reminding her of boundaries she wasn't supposed to cross. Yet David didn't let the moment slip. He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Laurenda, care about you, more than I thought I could care about anyone." Her breath hitched. "David, He placed a finger gently over her lips, a tender gesture that silenced her inner doubts. "Shoo," he said softly. "You don't have to say anything yet. Just feel it. Know it. Let it be real, even if it's quiet for now." For a long moment, they simply sat there, letting the unspoken connection settle around them. Laurenda felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. Despite the uncertainty of the future, the pressures of the contract, and the fragility of her mother's health, she felt anchored by him, by their bond, by the gentle certainty of their growing feelings. The following week, David surprised her with a small gesture. A weekend getaway to a quiet cabin by the lake. No cameras, no assistants, no business world intruding. Just the two of them. The drive was filled with conversation, laughter, and quiet moments of comfortable silence. David pointed out constellations in the clear night sky, and Laurenda shared childhood stories she hadn't told anyone in years. They cooked meals together, taking turns preparing simple dishes, and spent hours walking along snowy paths, enjoying the crisp air and the gentle crunch of snow beneath their feet. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Laurenda felt the courage to speak. "David, I'm scared," she admitted. "I've never felt this connected to someone before, but I worry about the future, the baby, my mom, everything." He took her hands in his. "I know," he said gently. "I feel it too. And yes, it's complicated. But love is complicated. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes it real." Her eyes welled with tears, but she smiled through them. I love you," she whispered, almost afraid to say it aloud. David's smile broke into a warmth that lit up his face. "I love you too, Laurenda," he said, voice steady and full of conviction. "And no contract, no situation, no fear will change that." They sat in quiet embrace, hearts aligned, knowing that while challenges still lay ahead, the foundation they were building was unshakable. Yet, as they held each other, a thought lingered at the back of Laurenda's mind. A reminder that reality wasn't paused for love. There were still difficult decisions to be made. The contract, her mother's health, the future of their family, all awaited them. And while love had taken root, the next steps would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. As the weekend ended and they returned to the city, Laurenda received a message from the fertility agency overseeing the surrogate arrangement. "David, Laurenda, there's been a complication with the legal paperwork. You must meet immediately. The future of your agreement and your baby could change today." Laurenda's chest tightened. David grabbed her hand. "Whatever happens, we face it together," he said. But Laurenda couldn't help wondering. Could love survive the next obstacle, or would the contract and outside pressures tear them apart? If you were Laurenda, would you trust David to face this complication with you? Comment Bilo? The sterile smell of the law office hit Laurenda before she even stepped inside. The fertility agency had requested an urgent meeting, and David had insisted on accompanying her. The lobby's polished floors reflected the fluorescent lights in a way that made the room feel larger, colder than it was. Laurenda clutched her purse like a lifeline as she followed David through the sliding glass doors. They were met by Mrs. Whitman, the agency director, who gestured them into a small conference room. The walls were lined with framed certifications, giving an air of authority, but Laurenda could feel her heart pounding against her ribs. "Laurenda, Mr. Cole," Mrs. Whitman began, her voice tight and formal, "thank you for coming on such short notice. We've encountered an unexpected issue with the legal paperwork regarding your surrogacy contract." David exchanged a glance with Laurenda, his hand brushing briefly against hers in a silent reassurance. "What kind of issue?" he asked calmly, though Laurenda noticed the slight tension in his jaw. Mrs. Whitman took a deep breath. "The court requires an additional confirmation that all parties fully understand the implications of the contract. Essentially, they want to ensure informed consent and clarify custodial rights should unforeseen circumstances arise. Without it, the agreement could be delayed or, in a worst-case scenario, invalidated." Laurenda felt her stomach drop. Weeks of planning, trust, and careful steps now teetered on the edge of uncertainty. She opened her mouth to speak but found her voice trembling. "So, this could affect the baby?" "It could," Mrs. Whitman confirmed gently. "Not directly the pregnancy itself, but legally, it could complicate parental rights, timelines for birth registration, and other essential matters." David leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "We'll comply with any requirements," he said steadily. "What needs to be done?" Mrs. Whitman passed them a thick folder. "This outlines the additional legal documentation that must be reviewed and signed. A court-appointed attorney will walk you both through it to ensure clarity." Laurenda swallowed hard, scanning the pages. The language was complex, filled with legal jargon she struggled to understand. Fear prickled at her spine, but David's presence at her side grounded her. He reached for her hand again, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We'll get through this," he whispered, his voice calm, unwavering. "I'm not letting anything happen to you or the baby without us facing it together." As the attorney arrived, Laurenda noticed the subtle shift in David's demeanor. While he was always careful, patient, and composed, she now realized he had entered full protector mode. Every question he asked was precise, deliberate, ensuring that her interests and rights were fully represented. Laurenda felt a surge of gratitude mixed with something more, something that made her chest flutter in ways unrelated to fear or stress. Hours passed. She and David worked through the complex paperwork, clarifying terms, understanding contingencies, and signing documents one by one. By the end of the session, the weight of relief settled over them like a warm blanket. The legal obstacle had been cleared, at least for now. Once outside the office, Laurenda exhaled, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. "That was intense," she said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and nervous laughter. David smiled, brushing snow off his coat. "It's behind us. Everything is on track now. We just have to keep supporting each other and the baby." Laurenda's heart tightened at the mention of their shared child. It was no longer just a business arrangement. Every kick, every heartbeat she felt reminded her that life had shifted. The contract had become a connection that neither of them could ignore. Over the following weeks, their routine shifted subtly. David made sure Laurenda attended all prenatal checkups, often driving her himself, arranging small surprises like warm blankets, her favorite snacks, or soothing playlists during long waits at the clinic. Laurenda, in turn, found herself opening up more, not just about the pregnancy or her mother's health, but about her hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. One evening, as they sat in her apartment after a routine checkup, David brought up something he had been contemplating. "Laurenda, have you thought about what happens after the baby is born?" Her hands froze around her tea mug. I don't know. I try not to think too far ahead." He nodded. "Understandable. But I want us to talk about it. Not because I'm pressuring you, but because I care about you. About both of you." Laurenda felt a lump in her throat. "David, it's not just the baby. It's my mother, my life, everything. I'm scared." He leaned closer, voice soft. "I know, and I can't promise it'll be simple. But I can promise I'll be here, every step of the way." The vulnerability in his voice, the earnestness in his eyes, made Laurenda's heart ache in a way she hadn't expected. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't just carrying a baby for money. She was part of something real, something rooted in care, respect, and slowly undeniable affection. Their bond deepened in ways neither of them anticipated. Small moments, a shared laugh during a prenatal class, his hand on her back during a walk in the park, quiet conversations in the evenings, became milestones of trust and intimacy. They weren't lovers in the traditional sense yet, but every gesture, every touch, was a step towards something neither could ignore. Then came a moment that shifted everything. Laurenda was sitting in the nursery, sorting tiny clothes for the baby, when David entered quietly. He watched her for a moment, taking in the sight of her carefully folding onesies and soft blankets, the gentle hum of concentration on her face. "You're amazing," he said softly, almost reverently. Laurenda looked up, startled. "I thank you. I'm just trying." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You're doing more than trying. You're creating life. You're carrying hope. You're being selfless in a way that I could never have imagined. And I'm grateful. To you, to fate, to everything that led you here." Her eyes filled with tears, but she laughed softly, a mix of disbelief and emotion. "David, I didn't expect any of this. I thought it would just be a contract, a job. But I don't know what I feel anymore." He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You feel love," he said simply. "You just don't know it yet." Laurenda's heart raced. She knew he was right. She felt it too. Every heartbeat, every glance, every touch was imprinting on her in ways that money could never measure, ways that no contract could dictate. Yet, as she looked into his eyes, a thought nagged at her. Could love born from an agreement survive the outside world? Could their connection endure the scrutiny, the expectations, the reality of life after the baby? That night, as David left her apartment, Laurenda's phone buzzed with an urgent message. "Legal complications have arisen. A court hearing is scheduled immediately regarding the custody clauses of your contract. You must attend or risk delays in finalizing arrangements." Her stomach sank. She looked out the window, snow falling softly. Could the love that had grown between her and David withstand the next legal challenge? Or would the world force them apart? If you were Laurenda, would you trust David to face the court challenge with you?
Comment Bilo?
The courthouse loomed before Laurenda like a monolith, its cold stone face and towering columns intimidating even in bright daylight. Snow had softened its edges, dusting the steps in a sparkling white coat, but it did nothing to calm her nerves. She clutched her coat tightly, shivering. Not from the chill, but from anticipation and anxiety. David walked beside her, calm and composed in a tailored navy suit, his hand brushing briefly against hers in silent reassurance. "We'll get through this," he said quietly. "Together." Laurenda nodded, though her throat felt tight. She had prepared herself for paperwork, signatures, and formalities. But a court hearing? The idea of being questioned, scrutinized, judged, it terrified her. Inside, the courtroom smelled of polished wood and formal authority. The judge's bench was high, the gallery benches long and hard. Lawyers and clerks moved with precision, their murmured conversations echoing faintly in the room. Laurenda and David took their seats at the front, papers and files neatly stacked in front of them. Their attorney, Ms. Reynolds, gave them a reassuring smile. "We've reviewed everything. Just stick to the facts. Answer honestly. Nothing more, nothing less." Laurenda exhaled, trying to steady her trembling hands. She glanced at David, who gave her a small nod. His calm presence was grounding, but also reminded her how much she cared, how much their bond had grown beyond a mere contract. The hearing began. The judge, a woman with kind eyes but a firm tone, addressed the courtroom. "We are here to review the surrogacy agreement between Laurenda Matthews and David Cole. Concerns have arisen regarding the legal clarity of parental rights and custodial arrangements. Both parties will provide testimony to ensure informed consent and full understanding of the agreement." Laurenda's heart pounded. She could do this, she could. And yet, as the first questions were posed, the tension coiled in her chest like a steel wire. "Ms. Matthews," the judge began, "can you confirm that you entered this agreement willingly and with full understanding of its legal implications?" Laurenda nodded, her voice slightly trembling. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand the agreement fully. I entered it voluntarily." "Mr. Cole?" David's voice was steady, measured. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand the legal obligations and rights outlined in this contract, and I consent fully." The hearing continued. Questions about timelines, medical procedures, financial obligations, and contingency plans filled the room. Each response required careful thought, honesty, and clarity. Laurenda felt the pressure mounting, her palms slick with sweat. Then came the question that made her heart nearly stop. "Ms. Matthews," the judge asked, "have you developed any personal attachment to the child or to Mr. Cole beyond the contractual arrangement?" Laurenda froze. Her mind flashed to the evenings spent with David, the quiet walks, the laughter, the subtle touches that had slowly built a bridge between them. She had tried to deny it, but here, in front of everyone, the truth was undeniable. "Yes, Your Honor," she whispered finally. I have grown attached to both the child and to Mr. Cole. This was never part of the plan, but it's real." A murmur passed through the courtroom. David's eyes softened, a mix of relief and something deeper, something tender and vulnerable that Laurenda had rarely seen. "Mr. Cole?" the judge prompted. He exhaled slowly, choosing his words with care. I feel the same. What began as a legal agreement has become a bond one cannot ignore. My feelings are sincere, and I accept responsibility for the emotional consequences of this relationship." Laurenda felt her chest tighten. His words, so deliberate and heartfelt, made her heart flutter uncontrollably. For the first time, she realized that their connection wasn't temporary. It was real. The hearing continued with more technicalities, but the tension had shifted. The legalities were being addressed, but beneath them lay a current of emotion that neither could ignore. Each response, each acknowledgement of feelings, built a fragile bridge between duty and desire. Hours passed. Finally, the judge leaned forward. "Based on the testimony and review of the documentation, the court is satisfied that both parties understand their rights and obligations. The surrogacy arrangement will proceed under the terms outlined, with the court recognizing the mutual consent and acknowledgement of emotional attachment. This hearing is adjourned." Laurenda exhaled, her body trembling with relief. The weight that had pressed on her chest for weeks, months, lifted in an instant. She glanced at David, whose expression mirrored her own. A mixture of exhaustion, relief, and something more intimate. As they left the courtroom, the snow had begun to fall again, soft flakes landing on their coats and hair. David reached for her hand, intertwining fingers with hers. "We did it," he said softly. Laurenda's eyes shimmered. "We really did." They walked silently for a few moments, letting the crisp winter air calm their racing hearts. Then David stopped, turning to face her. His gaze was intense, vulnerable, and filled with a quiet certainty. "Laurenda," he said, his voice low, "I can't promise that everything will be easy from here, but I can promise that I want to be with you. Not because of the contract, not because of anything else, because of you. Because of us." Tears pricked Laurenda's eyes. Her lips trembled as she whispered, I feel the same way, David. More than I expected, more than I thought I could." He smiled, relief and joy mingling in his expression. "Then we face the rest of this together. Every step, every challenge, every choice." Laurenda nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she believed that love born from circumstance could survive reality. But just as they began to walk toward the car, her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. "Laurenda, we need to talk. Christmas Eve dinner is earlier this year. Bring your guest." Her heart skipped a beat. Their private world, built quietly in hospital visits, shared walks, and whispered conversations, was about to collide with family expectations and the public eye. David's hand found hers again, a silent promise of support. "Ready for the next challenge?" he asked, a playful glint in his eye. Laurenda exhaled, a mixture of dread and anticipation swirling in her chest. "I think so," she said. "With you, I think I can be." The snow fell heavier now, each flake a symbol of new beginnings, uncertainties, and the love neither of them expected, but both had grown to need. As they approached the car, Laurenda's phone buzzed again, this time with a photo from her mother. A table overflowing with decorations, gifts, and family members staring expectantly. At the center was a subtle hint, a place set for her guest. Laurenda swallowed hard. Could their love withstand the scrutiny of family, society, and the world beyond the courtroom? Or was their connection fragile, built only in moments of shared vulnerability? If you were Laurenda, would you bring David to meet your family? Comment Bilo? The car hummed along the snowy streets of Chicago as Laurenda gripped the handle of her coat, heart pounding in anticipation. Across from her, David sat with quiet confidence, fingers lightly brushing hers every so often. Neither spoke much, words felt unnecessary. They both knew the gravity of the evening ahead. Family, expectations, the culmination of months of quiet connection, emotional highs and lows, and a pregnancy that had bound them together. Laurenda exhaled slowly. "I can't believe it's actually happening," she whispered. David gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I can. I've been ready for this since the first day I met you at the clinic. Everything else, contracts, formalities, was just noise." She looked at him, a mixture of awe and affection filling her gaze. "You make it sound so easy." He smiled softly, the kind of smile that made her chest tighten. "Easy isn't the word. Real. That's the word. What we have is real. And tonight we show it." The car pulled into the driveway of Laurenda's family home, the warm glow of holiday lights spilling over freshly fallen snow. She could see her mother through the window, bustling in the kitchen with an almost manic energy, arranging plates and decorations. Her father, ever the calm counterbalance, hovered nearby, carrying trays of food. Laurenda's stomach twisted. This was the moment where everything they had kept private would meet public scrutiny. She hadn't imagined bringing David into this part of her life, yet the thought of facing it alone now was unbearable. David leaned closer, his voice low. "Whatever happens, I'm here. No scripts, no contracts, just us." She nodded, feeling a warmth bloom despite the anxiety. Together, they stepped out of the car, snow crunching underfoot. David offered his arm, and she took it instinctively, finding comfort in his presence. The front door opened, and her mother's eyes lit up immediately. "Laurenda, there you are, darling." "And?" She glanced at David, then back at Laurenda, eyebrows rising expectantly. "Who is this handsome man?" Laurenda took a deep breath, heart racing. "Mom, this is David. He's my guest." Her mother's gaze softened, yet a hint of curiosity remained. "Guest, huh? Well, you've chosen wisely, I hope." David inclined his head politely. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Haddon." Her mother's sternness melted slightly at his sincerity, but her eyes lingered on Laurenda. "And what's the story here, dear?" Laurenda swallowed. "The story is that I wanted to bring someone special this year. Someone who's been a part of my life in ways I never expected." Her mother tilted her head, studying David. There was a moment of silence, a breath held in anticipation, before a small, knowing smile tugged at her lips. "Well, I see that already." Dinner unfolded with nervous energy. Conversations flowed, laughter punctuated quiet moments, and through it all, Laurenda and David moved seamlessly as partners, a subtle understanding connecting them. Every glance, every touch, every shared laugh built a bridge between them that no contract or circumstance could sever. After the main course, Laurenda's mother turned to her. "So, tell me more about David. How did you meet?" Laurenda glanced at David, a silent question passing between them. He gave a subtle nod, a quiet agreement to proceed. "He helped me through a very difficult time, Laurenda began, choosing her words carefully. We became close while going through something complicated. And it changed both our lives in ways I couldn't have imagined. David added softly, "It's true. What started as a formal arrangement grew into something real, something meaningful. And Laurenda, she's extraordinary." Her mother's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't interrupt. Laurenda continued, "I carried a life for him, and it was more than just a contract. It became personal, and it became love." The room grew quiet. Laurenda's father leaned back in his chair, processing, while her siblings exchanged whispered glances. David reached across the table, gently taking Laurenda's hand in his. "Laurenda, I don't just want to acknowledge what we've been through. I want to embrace it, fully, honestly, and if she'll allow me, I want to stand by her. Not because of any obligation, but because I love her." Laurenda felt tears prick her eyes. The weight she had carried, the guilt, the fear, the uncertainty, dissolved in that moment. She squeezed his hand. "David, I love you too. More than I expected. More than I thought I could." Her mother's stern expression softened completely. "Well," she said, a small smile forming, "I suppose love is the greatest gift, isn't it? You've both been tested. And yet here you are. That's what matters." Dinner continued, this time lighter, infused with warmth and laughter. Laurenda felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. The snow fell outside like a promise, each flake a symbol of new beginnings and second chances. After the meal, David and Laurenda stepped outside into the quiet winter night. The house glowed behind them, and the snowflakes danced around like tiny diamonds. David turned to her, eyes soft and earnest. "Laurenda, I know this started as a contract, as a business arrangement, but that's over now. What we have is ours. No rules, no obligations, just us." Laurenda felt her heart swell. "I never thought I'd find love like this. Not through contracts, not through arrangements. But you changed everything." He leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then let's face everything together. Every choice, every challenge, every joy." She nodded, feeling her chest tighten with emotion. "Yes, together." For a moment, they simply stood there, surrounded by falling snow, hearts aligned, silently acknowledging the journey that had brought them here. From a cold business agreement to a bond that defied expectations. Laurenda rested her head lightly on his shoulder. "I think this is the kind of Christmas I'll never forget." David smiled, holding her close. "Neither will I. And this is only the beginning." Above them, snow continued to fall, soft and gentle, like a blessing. Their love had emerged from uncertainty, fear, and circumstance. But it was real. It was theirs, and it was stronger than any obstacle life could place in their path. As they walked back into the house, Laurenda's phone buzzed. A message from the clinic. "All tests normal. Both mother and baby are healthy." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at David. "We did it. We really did it." David kissed her forehead gently. "And now we build a life. Together." The snow continued to fall outside, a quiet witness to a love that had begun as a contract, but had become a choice, a promise, and a future neither of them could have imagined. Would you choose love over all else if it started as a contract? Comment Bilo? Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.